Good evening, Terrence. From out here in New York City. How are you? I'm glad you decided to engage me in this debate. It's always wonderful to be able to discuss these things in an open manner. That way, we're not just yelling past each other, but we're actually, hearing each other's side on this issue. So I hold the premise to our viewers that the Black Lives Matter protesters are guilty in the Charlotteville, Virginia mayhem. And I came to this conclusion based on understanding the narrative that took place yesterday. And it is with great discomfort that to learn what has taken place in Virginia and to all the lives that were lost. Now, just to have the narrative straightened out, I from the manner in which I understand the narrative, I was informed that Unite the Right protesters were protesting the tearing down of Robert E. Lee statue in a park in Charlotteville, Virginia, and so they were licensed. They had a permit to peacefully have a rally at this particular park to protest against the teardown of the Confederate leader Robert E. Lee statue. And so they were properly licensed. And so this peaceful protest took place under the First Amendment protections, which the Federal Circuit Court in Virginia granted them. And so it wasn't until Black Lives Matter protesters who were not licensed to be in the premise came along and started yelling slurs at them that we now had police officers begin to be active in the protests when prior they were not active, and it was in ensuing that they unconstitutionally and violated their boundaries to enforce the law, removing the Unite the Right protesters out of the park and into the streets where they were not protected by their permit restrictions, and so where this violence now erupted, where you had even one fella who I don't agree with, from the Unite the Right movement, take a car and run down about tons of people that were on the streets protesting. I protect everyone's First Amendment right. However, I do not defend someone who is violating other people's constitutional right to assemble and to peacefully protest, even if I don't agree with what they're protesting about. And Terrence, I'm going to allow you to just, have a chance to speak here. I'm going to pass the mic real fast.
All right. So can you hear me? Can you hear me? I'm just making sure you can hear me. All right. So first, let me say this. Let me start by saying, in no way, in case anybody has a misconception about the title of the debate, in no way am I a Black Lives Matter sympathizer or anything else, just in case anybody thinks that. I just had to get that out of the way. So let me say this. So far, what you said is I'll give you, it's pretty accurate what you said so far. But what I want to dwell on is the fact that the alt-right in their Unite the Right protest, that if you watch the early videos of it, you see them going to the protest and you see them with like all kind of assault rifles and everything else. Looking at the website, and the website, which is one of their more popular alt-right websites, Daily Stormer, they call this it was the battle of Charlottesville. So in my opinion, yes, you may have some Black Lives Matter, but for the most part, when you watch the videos of the protest, it wasn't just Black Lives Matter there. It wasn't so, I don't think the presence of Black Lives Matter was as big. You can say there were some Black Lives Matter there. You can say there were some Antifa there. You can say there were some of everybody there. There might have been some women's right people there that was also there also. However, the alt-right and their Unite the Right, they went there for battle. They went there with the whole thing of they're going to go take back Charlottesville. And no matter who was on that other side, I believe that it still would have happened the same way. So that is my opening comments. The most important thing I want to say is that I am not a Black Lives Matter sympathizer. I just wanted to get that out. But at that point, I'll go ahead and pass it back to you.
Yes, Terrence, I'm glad you made that point. And being the fact that you said that, I want to make my point clear. I am not a Unite the Right sympathizer, nor am I a Black Lives Matter sympathizer either. I just have a respect for the Constitution and the fact that we have First Amendment rights in this country. And we are a nation of laws and not of men, and I hold to that principle. Regardless if I don't agree with whatever you're protesting or rallying about, I defend your right to do that, so long as it's done peacefully and it's done through legal means. Terrence, to your opening statement now, the Unite the Right movement, as much as we don't agree with what they were doing and what they were rallying about, it was not. It did have some tone to really have a feeling that they're trying to take over Charlotteville, Virginia, because of the fact that they wanted to keep the statue of Robert E. Lee there when in context, the legislature of Virginia actually are planning to remove the statue, which Black Lives Matter and other counter protesters support. But it wasn't really about them trying to take over Virginia. It was more about them trying to maintain the statue. So that's the point I really have to kind of refute you on. And now to the point of BLM being there and other groups being there, I mean, you are really addressing my point because of the fact that they are not licensed to be there. They were never licensed to be in that particular location. They did not go through the legal means and the legal process that the Unite the Right movement did, getting judge permits and getting up and getting special appeals and protections to particularly be in the site. It's similarly to the best analogy that I can think of right off the bat right now is technically a special interest organization like a church, reserving the rights to a park and receiving the permit and going through all the legal channels to do so. And they holding their rallies, and everyone obviously knows the things that common Christian or Christian organization would be against. And so now you have all these different channels come in. You have the LGBT community, you have people from Planned Parenthood, they come along and they start protesting. And now, yes, this is sort of, you're going to basically agitate those people, and the police that are there, they're going to, if they start to see you're kind of causing a reaction to those who are peacefully having their rally, they would come and they'll try to enforce the law. Now, where the police went wrong is the police removed them from the premise in which they were protected by their permit, removing them from the park and into the streets where this violence erupted. And I believe whenever you have police officers violate any judge's order with regards to restrictions on where someone can peacefully rally, you would have that. And so this is and so all sides are wrong on this issue, but mainly the police officers for not doing their job, which was to enforce the court order. And so I'm going to pass it off to you real fast.
Okay, so there's a lot of things you have to look at. Okay, so starting from the Friday night. So Friday night you start out, and there was a protest on the UVA campus, which is I suppose where the statue is. So you have that. Then you have the violence that erupted that morning. Now, say what you will. Okay, so I can't. I try to go off facts, not feelings. So I don't want to say that. Look at this, the way it implied and stuff like that. But okay, when you have a whole bunch of people and they're going on the college campus or around a sign, and they have assault rifles, and they have swastika flags, and they have rebel flags, and they have bullhorns, and they're saying, screaming, I'll just say the N-word and stuff like that, and we're taking our country back, and we're fulfilling the promises of the president and stuff like that. There are inciting violence. Okay, that's no matter who's on the other side, because it's not like Black Lives Matter was the only people that got into it with them. If the alt-right was there and Black Lives Matter was there, and this was a clash between those two sides, then your premise of Black Lives Matter is responsible for this would be valid. But the mere fact that, like, the woman that got ran over by the car, she wasn't a Black Lives Matter protester, she's a normal protester. The state of emergency was declared in Charlottesville that morning, and this was before the whole car incident when the lady got ran over. So the peaceful protest, or whatever it was already closed out as far as legalism goes. But what you have is the people, whether they say they were there for a peaceful protest or not, there's what they say, and then there's what their actions showed. And their actions showed that they weren't there for a peaceful protest. They were there for a battle. And no matter who was on the other side, they were going to get their point across by any means necessary. Not to quote Malcolm X, but that's almost the way it was. And you see that, like I said, you see that with the fact that it was tear gas that had already been thrown by the police, and the riot started Friday night before the even Saturday morning even came, which is what prompted the governor to call it a state of emergency in Charlottesville. So it had already boiled over Friday night before this, and this was on a college campus with the college protesters. So to say it was Black Lives Matter is maybe Black Lives Matter was 10% of the total opposition force, not big enough to be the main detractor, the main enemy of the alt-right in this.
Okay, great. So you made some points, and I want to just adjust those points. Okay, so you talked about the Unite the Right the night before. They were carrying weapons. They had very inflammatory signs, and they were yelling out racist comments. Again, this is the night before, and I want to make clear that based on from what I'm hearing, you were talking from a different context with regards to we're in a different location, not in the location where they had the permit to be in, which was the park where Robert E. Lee statue is located at. So you're talking about a campus versus an actual park where the Robert E. Lee statue at. Those are two different settings. So let's get that straightened out. Now for them to be doing that on a college campus, I have not looked at that particular evidence, so I'm going to be honest enough not to look to address it too much. But I can say this much: regardless if it was a college campus or whether if it was at a say like a local street or say a park that barely anybody walks into, like if people are, our First Amendment protects someone's right to like have a peaceful rally, so long as they're not like going into other people's faces and blocking streets and doing certain things that will basically disturb the public function of life of people. They have every right to do what they were doing. As much as I don't agree with it, they have every right to carry around it's freedom of expression. They have a right to express themselves, and whether if it's through signs or whether it's through racist comments, they have a right to express themselves, so long as they're not going about just disturbing the lives of regular people like me and you who could be walking around going about our business. They could do it within the confines of whatever space they were in, et cetera, et cetera. Even if they don't have the permit to, they have a right to. I protect their right to do that. And now with regards to like I have a question. What makes you certain that this woman that was run over by a car was not affiliated with any of the groups that were involved in the counter protest to the alt-right movement that was happening? Now I'm talking in context of after the police officers removed the alt-right protesters who lawfully had a right to be in the park and into the streets.
Okay. Somebody sent me a text just now, so I got a little bit distracted. But I took notes. Okay, so let me say it like this. All right, so let's take away the whole the college campus thing. Okay, let's take away that. All right, so we'll dwell on the protest at the park around the Robert E. Lee statue. The point is that your major thing is that it was a lawful protest and they had every right to be there. All right. And in no way would I ever try to take away a person's right to protest. I don't personally protest because it's usually hot outside. They never pick protest on nice, cool days. But so they do this, and a state of emergency had already been declared in Virginia. Well, the governor declared a state of emergency and basically ended the legal aspect of this protest. So at this point, people were just screaming. Police were there trying to keep order, and the screaming was going on. All right. So at this point, nobody has a legal certification or a legal protest paperwork to be there. So you have this. Then also you have, if you watch all the media coverage, and I know media is biased, but when you watch all the media coverage, you see that there are not only Black Lives Matter there, there's different groups, different organizations, and different everything. Even pastors were out there, because a lot of people were calling for pastors to go there and unite and use the church as the counter to the alt-right in their movement. So you have that. Now, this woman, now going off the alt-right, and I went to the alt-right, just trying to look up stuff for this woman. And on the alt-right, the dailystormer.com, it just says, Heather Heyer, woman killed in road rage incident, was a fat, childless 32-year-old slut. And that was hers. Now, on Facebook, everybody's passing around a picture of her, and there has been no evidence so far that has made her look like she was a Black Lives Matter supporter. No evidence that she was a at least a Antifa supporter. It only said that she was there because she wanted to talk and she felt that love and coming together, regardless of people's issues, should be a priority. So, according to her Facebook post before she was killed and her friends, she was going there in peace. Now, the alt-right, the person on the other side, and they're calling it, the alt-right calling it a road rage incident. You can call it that. I call it that you getting mad and plowing through a crowd of people that are against your thought process. But it wasn't, like I said, you can't say that Black Lives Matter, that their presence was big enough to be just important enough to be responsible for this.
Okay, great. I want to address your most recent point, the last point that you made with regards to the woman who wanted to go over there just basically to, sort of spread peace and preach and sing, a peaceful song to those who are already very, 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 very in an emotional state of mind, and very violence had already erupted, and they were in a very, very, very confrontational state of mind. I mean, it's one thing before this thing erupted for you to try to do that and for you to try to start a campaign, but it's another thing to be in the middle of the conflict trying to do this. I mean that's basically the best analogy I can use off the top of my head right now is basically a war is happening. Iraq war is happening, and you're going to go over there to Iraq, and you're going to try to go in the middle of the battlefield with a war, with a fire being fired, and you're trying to tell them, hey guys, hold your fire, don't fire each other. Any logically thinking person, any person who is thinking in their right mind would know that you do not go to a zone, you do not go to an area and where the violence is already erupting to try to prevent both parties from fighting when the fighting has already started. I mean, that's just completely a bad decision on her part. Not that I agree with the decision from the alt-right decision maker who actually decided to run over her. I mean, I don't agree with his premise. He was in the heat of the moment, and in any heat of the moment, it is unwise for any human being to try to quell the situation. Now, if it's a one-on-one fight, that's a different situation. Then you have hundreds of people fighting each other and rioting and stuff of that nature. So I mean, it was a wise decision on her part, but however, I don't agree with the decision to run over her. In the same context, I also want to talk about based on your comments that you made prior to that last comment. I mean, according to your account, this is what I'm interpreting you saying. If there is a public speaker who holds an unpopular view, unpopular political view for that matter, wants to go to a college campus where his worldview is very unpopular, if the governor of that state declares a state of emergency, he does not have a right to go on that college campus. So now you infringe on his rights, First Amendment, to express himself because of the fact that you declare a state of emergency and you do not want to use the police officers and the resources you have in your state to protect his freedom of speech, to speak to those on college campus and to those and to that political group who invited him to speak on college campus. So by your account, that's how I'm interpreting it. So by that same token, because it's a state of emergency that was declared by the governor of that particular state, those people, the alt-right, should not have a right to protest and exercise their freedom of expression, their freedom of speech, because of the fact it could cause a public violence.
Hey, I was watching the timer countdown, seeing if you was going to be able to squeeze all that into the last 5 seconds. So in my minute 52, I'm going to try to go through all mine. Okay, so you said that this woman was in the middle of controversy and that no logical thinking person would be like basically in the heat of the battle. Now, see right there, that's making an assumption. We can't assume that this woman just happened to be in the heat. She might have been on the outskirts. We don't know her physical position and where it was. So we can't say that. What we can address is the fact that, okay, so the whole premise of this debate is that Black Lives Matter was responsible. And let's just say you weren't trying to say they were solely responsible. Let's say you were trying to say that they were just as responsible as the alt-right for the violence. Is that about what you're trying to say, that they're just as responsible? You can give me, okay, all right. So like I said, to say that you would have had to have shown that Black Lives Matter had a huge significant presence there in response to the alt-right side. However, there's no evidence that Black Lives Matter was there in such huge numbers that would just cause us a big, huge war and situation. Not to mention the fact that this woman in her trying to be there. Now, she had as right to be there at that point as the alt-right. And I don't want to just say that I don't want to deem on this woman. I'll just say this. That there's no evidence, there's no proof that the Black Lives Matter was there in such significant numbers that they would be 50% responsible. What you have is 50% on the alt-right, and you have probably the other 50% you have to divide it up between a whole bunch of different people. So yeah, maybe the alt-right might have focused on just the dark colored faces or something like that, but there were way too many other groups out there. There were way too many church groups and peaceful protesters out there to say Black Lives Matter was responsible for the amount of violence